Hey, it's Soul with another video, and today I want to share what we know so far about World of Warcraft Dragonflight's reputations, to which the reality is we don't know a lot, but I also want to speculate on what could be Dragonflight's other reputations and also discuss what sorts of activities, if any, might we have for said reputations. So as always, I'd appreciate your support by liking the video and subscribing for more content. And first, let's talk about what we do know. There are actual facts in this video. Yay! So there are going to be 4 big, I guess they're calling them mega reputations in Dragonflight that we'll be progressing through at endgame. Now, these special reputations are going to be on a reward track, sort of similar but not quite like Renown in today's Shadowlands. The idea is that, like regular old reputations, we're going to do stuff, right? We're going to do quests and beat up monsters and maybe turn in stuff that we find on the ground and progress towards getting rewards and perks. Unlike reputations, though, as we hit milestones on this new reward track, we're going to sort of immediately get things. So it feels like Renown, but it's not, because we won't have to switch between reputations like we do with Covenants. We should be able to just do what we want, depending on our mood. There may be additional reputations in the more traditional sense. I'll call them lesser reputations maybe. But in terms of scope, I'm left with the impression that the 4 main reputations seem to be less like Talanji's Expedition and more like Covenants, as in it's like a gameplay feature that the team is putting a lot of work into. So it's for that reason I speculate that these big reputations might, I'm saying this in bold text, might have special gameplay activities associated with them. And we'll be talking about what those could be shortly. Now, we know the names of 2 of the Dragonflight factions we'll be wrapping up with. The first is the Dragonscale Expedition. This is the collaboration of the Alliance's Explorers League and the Horde's Reliquary. So basically the observers and scholars and scientists who we champions are going to be sailing with to the Dragon Isles. It's easy to presume that we'll get to know this faction almost right away in the Waking Shores, which is the first zone in Dragonflight. And we have a few adventures with them before moving on, only to return at max level for even more content. The second faction is called the Valdrakken Accord. Now, there's not much to know about this faction, other than its name Valdrakken is the same as the player hub in Dragonflight. Similar to the Wormrest Accord from Wrath of the Lich King, the Valdrakken Accord is likely the shared alliance between all the participating Dragonflights, which may or may not include the Black Flight. And for now, let's pause here and briefly talk on a little design philosophy and precedence. Dragonflight is going to have 4 of these epic beefy reputations, of which we know of 2. Shadowlands, in the meantime, had 4 ruling covenants, and along with them, they had a big old quest campaign, and transmog, and pets, and mounts, and titles, and unique activities, all of which wrapped around a theme that was exclusively their own. I mean, never mind whether you thought they were fun or not. So it stands to reason that Dragonflight's factions may be the product of lessons learned from Shadowlands. We've already learned a bit on how this is sort of like Reputations 2.0, but what about the activities? Might there be special activities per faction that, for their own reasons, the WoW team just decided to not share details on yet? It could be. But let's continue on, and now we'll predict on what the other 2 factions could be, because there are a few candidates based on what little we've seen. So first are the Centaur. The Maruk tribe on the Dragon Isles are unlike other Centaur that we've seen on Azeroth. The Maruk have been able to develop and grow their civilization over 10,000 years. Obviously, that doesn't mean they have airplanes and high-speed internet, but they are more advanced than their counterparts. In the Dragonflight reveal, developers mentioned that upon our first arrival on the Anaran Plains, the second zone of the game, we're going to be greeted with a view of the zone, along with perhaps centaurs hunting and bringing down a proto-drake, and we'll be helping them do it. So this tribe isn't going to be immediately hostile to us. We're going to be assisting these centaurs throughout our questing in the zone, and the Emerald Dragonflight also makes their home here. So I predict that the third faction will in fact be the Maruk tribe, because they'll largely be present in this zone. They'll have a unique vibe, and while dragons are cool, there's already going to be a dragon faction, and I don't think we need a second one. As for the 4th faction, we're sort of narrowing down a pattern here, so let me throw up a little visual chart. The first zone, the Waking Shores, are the home of the Red and the Black Dragonflight, and the Dragonscale Expedition lands here, so I think their presence will mostly be felt in this zone. The second zone, the Honoran Plains, is the home of the Centaur and the Emerald Dragonflight as mentioned. Skipping ahead, the fourth zone, Thaldrassil, is the home of the Bronzeflight, where Valdrakken is located, so naturally the Valdrakken Accord will be based here, and the fifth zone is for now reserved for the Drakthir. So who is in the third zone? The third zone is called the Azure Span, home of the Blue Dragonflight and one other race that we know of that's friendly to players, the Tuskar. Now, I'm confident that at some capacity we'll be working alongside this race. There are a bunch of new models for them, there's a mount that I'm going to wager that we can get at some point, unless it's a race exclusive mount, if you know what I mean. Since there isn't much of a backstory, it's hard to say if the Tuskar alone is going to be a reputation, or is it kind of going to be a partnership with the Tuskar and the Blue Dragonflight that will create this one faction. There are notable candidates who could represent Dragonflight's fourth reputation, but also could end up being one of the lesser reps that we're more familiar with, as in, you fill up a rep bar and you get rewards. The Tuskar who I just talked about, they might be a small reputation. The same goes for the likes of Rathian. I mean, sure, he's a black dragon, but his ambitions might deviate a bit from the Valdrakken Accord. And to be fair, as far as we know, the Titan population has been whittled down to like 1, but this guy might be a faction of his own too. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but there might be a faction that is entirely dedicated to the development of our dragon riding skills. The August Celestials from Mists of Pandaria come to mind as a faction that's meant to kind of challenge our flying abilities with some fun, non-combat challenges. And maybe we can consider the Dragonflights to separately have their own reputations. I mean, think of this, like the Valdrakken Accord is the big renown-like reputation, while each of the flights is a minor reputation for us to get some extra goodies from. Now, just as important as the folks that we'll be dealing with during Dragonflight, there's also how we're going to be dealing with them. What sorts of activities might there be to look forward to? Now, it's exciting to talk about what ifs here, but I also gotta mention that we don't know if there will be extra activities like this at all in Dragonflight. We do know the WoW team's words and intent. Like, they want world content to be great. They have teams working on making it great with lots of activities and random events to make the world feel alive. But will the reputations be involved and how? That is what we're speculating on today. So I think it's best to start off with the factions that are confirmed, the Dragonscale Expedition and the Valdrakken Accord. For what's going to be 2 expansions now, archaeology is not expected to receive an update, unfortunately. It doesn't look very good for the profession in the long run, especially with the Dragonscale Expedition in mind. Like, we're on the Dragon Isles to discover things and learn and study, so I'd figure that updating archaeology would make perfect sense. Personally though, I have to admit that archaeology has never been all that fun or engaging to me. It's kind of like gathering, but with a lot more steps and a lot less money, which I know is not the point. So I'd like to think that activities with the Dragonscale Expedition are going to help set up a possible Archaeology 2.0, but in Dragonflight they're just sort of testing the waters with new ideas. So like, for example, maybe there's junk that we can find out in the world, maybe we will be surveying again and it'll be slightly different, and what we find can then be submitted to the expedition for them to analyze and will be rewarded for helping make certain discoveries. It'll open up quests to excavate new areas and more. In so few words, the WoW team said that there wouldn't be a mission table, but they didn't explicitly say that there would be no offline progression at all, so maybe these researches might take time. Maybe instead of missions, it'll be queuing up items for the expedition to research. But I'm going to pause there, because my initial impressions of my own predictions are sort of like they're sort of like meh, right? I mean, it doesn't sound all that fun. And maybe that's why the WoW team hasn't revealed these activities yet. So good job, I think. So what about the Valdrakken Accord? This one is tougher to speculate on because we're talking about all the Dragonflights. Now, I did mention dragon riding, that it could be something that the Accord is involved with as an activity if it's not a regular reputation faction. But the devs have mentioned that Thaldrassis, this is the zone where the Valdrakken is, it's where the Bronzeflight calls home. And there's some cool gameplay possibilities with a flight that has mastery over time. Now, some folks have talked up a concept that combines the likes of Torghast with the Caverns of Time, where different floors take us to different eras of Warcraft history. Now, I'd love to see something like that, like a mini Torghast or a Jailer's Gauntlet, just without some crazy player power requirement that forces us to dive back in there. As for the unconfirmed reputations, there's still plenty of opportunity for some fun activities. The Centaur tribe seems to be a lot about like hunting on the Anarian Plains, so why not take that up a couple notches? I can see that zone as a kind of big game hunter kind of zone with some impressive stuff to catch. Only since you're on Centaur land, you've got to play by Centaur rules, so that's going to mean foregoing your mounts and class abilities and roles in favor of old-fashioned hunting weapons and tactics if you want to participate in these special ritualistic hunts. I think it would make for an interesting kind of world boss, where dozens of players are like chucking spears at a giant proto-drake while dodging its attacks. Meanwhile, other challenges can be done alone with your regular class abilities, but they're more difficult, so this would be something close to the level of the Mage Tower. It's a bit more difficult to imagine what super cool activity the Tuskar could offer. That's why I'm thinking to myself that maybe they will be one of the lesser reputations. However, if we consider the reputation as a team-up of the Tuskar and the Blue Dragonflight, maybe we could be onto something. In the story of the Azure Plains, where these two races reside, there's supposed to be a place called Sindragosa's Archives. Now that could be a dungeon, it could be a future raid, it could be a gameplay feature, a kind of dungeon that challenges us not with difficult mobs, but with puzzles to solve and codes to decrypt and loot to be found. And that's about all I've got when we consider the friendly races that we know about. So now it's your turn to exercise a bit of your wonderment and curiosity and speculation. What do you think the 4 big reputations in Dragonflight are going to be? Or what are the not so big reputations? And what sorts of new endgame activities might be waiting for us in the outdoor world? So if you could please like the video to help out, subscribe for more Dragonflight content, and I'll see you later. Thanks for coming, and until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.